Hey, this is Mark Moore, aka Tuxedo Mark, at various places on the internet. It's 10:05 a.m. according to a computer clock on Friday, June 7, 2013. And in this vlog, I would like to talk about the 2009 Star Trek film. I'll do a separate video later on for Star Trek Into Darkness. But it occurs to me I never did review the first film, so okay. I have seen, first of all, I have seen every Star Trek film in the theater since First Contact. And I don't know if I was actually like a fan yet in order to see Generations. I was a fan by the time that it came out on home video. I'm not sure when I became a Star Trek fan. I mean, I had probably seen some episodes of the original series on TV, like back in, middle school or whatever. But I think with TNG, I think I saw Relics, I think, because I had heard that Scotty was coming back on. I was thinking, oh, that's a character from the original series, right? This is probably a big deal. So I think I saw Relics, I guess, when it aired. I'm not sure. I know I was familiar with the series anyway, because LeVar Burton had done a behind-the-scenes look on Reading Rainbow, which I watched, so yeah, I was aware of TNG. I think I actually really first got into TNG with All Good Things, the series finale of all things, and then I kind of went back and started watching the episodes in like late night syndication on weekday nights. It also aired in syndication in the afternoons, and at one point it was airing in prime time in syndication again. It was like they made a big deal about the return of primetime Trek or something. But yeah. So when I went to see Star Trek 2009, first of all, I was thinking, okay, a prequel. I mean, they had already done a prequel with Enterprise, but now they were doing like young Kirk, and it's like, okay, well, couldn't they think of something else to do? I mean, what about what was going on in the 24th century, which was the present time? We hadn't seen anything from the 24th century since Nemesis. And that had been, 7 years earlier. So, or whatever. Okay, so I go in and I'm watching this, and first of all, it really looks good, and there are funny moments and stuff, and I enjoyed it overall. The thing is the time travel, and it involves a time traveling Romulan named Nero that comes back in time to exact revenge, because in the 24th century Romulus had been destroyed, and Spock had promised that he would save it, and he failed. So Nero comes back in time, and to 23rd century, to like just before Kirk's birth, and okay, I'll get into that, but so it turns out that older Spock, Leonard Nimoy, had given chase after Nero, back in time, but he arrives at a later point. Now, because apparently some kind of subplot of Nero being taken prisoner by the Klingons had been dropped. The way it comes across in the film is Nero apparently just sat around for like 20-something years doing nothing. Okay, so that was really weird. And he's like he's bald and he's got a tattoo on his face. It's really weird. They were like miners or something like that, I think. Anyway, this causes a change in the timeline, obviously. And I will get into the whole ramifications of that and why I have a problem with it in a separate video, because that really deserves a separate video to discuss that. There's just so much to say about it. But anyway, according to the characters in the film and the logic behind it, they are now in an alternate reality where whatever they would have experienced before might not necessarily happen. And you could even argue that Kirk was born early because the attack by Nero's ship induced labor in his mother. Anyway, Kirk's father, George Kirk, takes command of the USS Kelvin, I believe, and he holds off the attack long enough to make sure that everyone gets to the shuttles and escapes. And Kirk is born on the shuttle, and he's named, and you know, it's cute. Anyway, so Kirk, apparently his mother remarries or whatever, or at least has a boyfriend. Some redneck guy. You never even see him, and I don't think we even learn his name. But Kirk's, growing up in Iowa, and he's got some kind of redneck for a stepfather, and Kirk takes a classic car out for a joyride when he's like, I don't know, 10 or something, and he's listening to Beastie Boys, and there's a 21st century Nokia phone in the car. And moving on. We'll move on from that because that scene really serves no purpose. Anyway, so Kirk is he grows up and he's he's a jerk, basically. He gets into a fight in a dive bar, and then Christopher Pike challenges him to enlist in Starfleet, and Kirk goes out to see where the Enterprise is being built, and anyway, everyone conveniently gets together because they have to launch the Enterprise, and they have to get cadets and stuff. And you would think that they would have manned starships and stuff, on Earth, already fully prepared and ready to go, and not have to rely on cadets. But anyway, whatever. I guess Heart of the Federation means nothing. They have to rely on cadets because, they have to get Kirk on the Enterprise. So the entire crew, minus Scotty, gets together. Kirk is held captive by Nero. Kirk ends up paralyzed. They arrest, not Kirk, Pike, and then so they rescue Pike, and Spock's in command of the Enterprise, and Kirk is exiled down to a planet. Oh, by the way, Vulcan is destroyed. Yeah, Nero destroys the planet Vulcan, and Spock's mother, Amanda, is killed during the beam out. I'll get into that in the other video. Um, anyway, so while Kirk's down on this planet, he finds he finds the original Spock, and Spock explains what happens, and he mind melds with Kirk, and he says Kirk must take command of his ship, and then they go and they find Scotty, because apparently this is some kind of Federation or Starfleet outpost or something like that. They get back on the Enterprise, and Kirk basically goads Spock and proves that Spock is unfit for command, and Kirk takes command of the ship. And anyway, anyway, they eventually defeat Nero, and the original Spock meets with his younger self, and then he goes to help colonize, to found a new Vulcan colony. Okay, so I'm sure that I'm missing a lot of stuff. The last time that I watched it was I rented it on home video when it came out, so I've seen it twice. Overall, I think the cast is pretty good. Especially Carl Urban as Dr. McCoy. It looks like he's like channeling the spirit of DeForest Kelley. It's kind of uncanny. And when the light strikes him just right, he looks like DeForest Kelley. Everyone else is good too. Zachary Quinto as Spock. Chris Pine as Kirk. I liked Bruce Greenwood's interpretation of Christopher Pike. The new Enterprise looks good, but I'll get into why it looks how it does in the other video. Let's just chalk all of this up to alternate reality for now. The music score is really good. I really love it. Let's see. It's not much of a cerebral movie like some of the other films are. It's definitely more action oriented, and it definitely has a lot of special effects and stuff like that. I'm not qualified to talk about the scientific accuracy or anything like that. I have no idea about any of that, so but overall I think it was good. I would not have done young Kirk. I would have continued on with the 24th century and shown what was going on in the aftermath of the Dominion Wars and stuff like that. It didn't necessarily even have to use or rely on previous cast members, although they could be in for supporting roles. But what I would have done is have a new crew, maybe on a starship, but also deal with like what's been going on Earth and in the Federation in general, because when Deep Space Nine ended in 1999, we kind of lost track of what was going on in the Federation, because Voyager was still, in the Delta Quadrant, and even though they gave us hints, they showed Earth sometimes, so they gave us hints of what was going on, especially toward the end of Voyager's run. But then But then after 2001, when they decided to do the prequel series Enterprise, they went back to the 22nd century, and we really had no idea what was going on in the present. So I would have liked to have explored that, because what I would have done going back to Voyager. First of all, I don't think I would have done Voyager in the first place if I was in charge, or at least I wouldn't have done it in a Lost in Space style. But I would have brought Voyager back home at the end of season 5, or at the very least at the beginning of season 6. Basically, right after the Dominion War, right after Deep Space Nine ended, just so we could continue showing what was going on in the Federation. And Voyager could have done its last 2 seasons in the Alpha Quadrant. Okay? I don't think I would have done an Enterprise either, or at least I would have done it differently. But I'll get into that in the other video as well. So overall, I liked the 2009 Star Trek film, even though it's not what I would have done. I realized that they needed like a reboot of sorts. They need to kind of stop, take a break, and then restart it. But I wouldn't have done it that way. I would have still kept going with all of the continuity that had been built up since since 1987, with all of the 24th century stuff. I would have just continued going with it. I would have picked up in the proper year that it would have been if and I realized it would with the new cast and stuff like that. I would have done that and tried to make it as accessible as possible for new fans, while still throwing in some references to what had gone before. Because, okay, as I was gonna say earlier, at the beginning of the modern era of Star Trek, and when it started in 1987, we picked up at 2364. The Federation had 2 main strong adversaries in the original series: the Klingons and the Romulans. Now, the Klingons and the Federation made peace. The Klingons agreed to peace out of necessity in the late 23rd century, near the end of Kirk's time, because it was due to the Khitomer Accords, and that was covered in Star Trek VI: The Undiscovered Country in 1991. Okay. The Romulans, according to the season 1 episode, The Neutral Zone, I believe that was where they mentioned it, that the Romulans had been silent for around 50 years. So the Federation has had no problems with them. Okay. So, 2 main adversaries, they are 2 main classic adversaries. They had no problems with them anymore. So, that's why when we picked up in the mid 24th century with Next Generation, at that point, the the Federation had enjoyed an unprecedented era of peace. Okay, so that's why the starships were bigger, that's why they included families, and that's why it was all just about, exploring the unknown and, that's it. Starfleet was not militarized, okay? It was just, wee! Alright, so it's very clear season 1 of Next Generation was pretty aimless. They were trying to build up the Ferengi as a potential new villain throughout the first season, but when the Ferengi finally appeared, they were very laughable. So the Ferengi eventually became comic relief. They had 2 episodes that eventually introduced an insect-like race from like very far away. It was like a parasitic race that took control of people's bodies by going into their mouths, and a gill protruded from the back of their necks. And they took control of the person's brain, basically. And there was a hint that a beacon was sent out, and even more of them would be coming. That never materialized. Now, in the season 1 finale, The Neutral Zone, from what I read, the writers were writing under the assumption that the parasitic aliens were coming back, and they were responsible for the colonies being destroyed. But this was eventually retconned in season 2, in the season 2 episode Q-Who, when the Borg were finally introduced. And the Borg were the villains that modern Star Trek really needed, because there was no main threat. I mean, it was just all about exploration and the plan of the week or the problem of the week. And introducing the Borg really shook things up. Now, even before the Borg showed up, their presence was felt in the Neutral Zone. And this is kind of problematic, because in the Neutral Zone, the Enterprise encounters the Borg when Q sends the ship 2 years away. It would take them 2 years of maximum warp to get back home. Now, at the end of that episode, Picard's like, "You'll be coming," and Guy's like, "You can count on it." So the implication there is that the Borg were going to come only now that they've learned of the Federation. But at the same time, that episode is kind of retroactively saying that the Borg were responsible for the destructions on each side of the Neutral Zone back in season 1. So it's like, that doesn't fit. But anyway, in addition to the Borg, the season 1 finale brought back the Romulans, and they said, "We are back," and Picard's like, "I think our lives just became a lot more complicated." Okay, so, but still, I mean, yeah, there's the Borg, and then there was the Borg invasion in the Best of Both Worlds, which is awesome. And then they introduced the Cardassians as another good threat. And then when Deep Space Nine came along, they had the stable wormhole that led to the distant Gamma Quadrant, and they introduced the shapeshifters and the Jem'Hadar, the Dominion. Okay, So there was this huge war. There was the Dominion War that took up like a good part of the last part of Deep Space Nine. It was awesome, and I haven't watched it since then. I really need to eventually rewatch this stuff. But the point is, the Dominion was such a big threat, and they were allied with Cardassia, shapeshifters and stuff like that. So the Federation, obviously, they're allied with the Klingons. There was a brief moment during Deep Space Nine when the Klingons withdrew from the Khitomer Accords, and they kind of became the Federation's enemy again. But then they rejoined the Accords, and they were allies again. Okay, so the Federation is allied with the Klingons, and they even allied with the Romulans. Wow. So at the end of the war, Cardassia has freaking been decimated by the war. The Cardassians, by the way, turn against the Dominion and help the Federation out. Okay, so Cardassia is freaking decimated, and they're going to be occupied. I don't know if they explicitly mentioned that, but they would have been occupied like you wouldn't believe. I bet you the Federation was gonna keep very close tabs on them. The Federation and the Klingons and the Romulans all took a heavy beating during the war. So, in short, nobody was in any position to start any trouble with anyone else. So, in a way, this was an appropriate place for the 24th century portion of Star Trek to end, because we would have just gone right back to the peaceful exploration aspect of it. Because unless there's a big new threat, coming, then nobody would have done anything. There wouldn't have been as much conflict as there had been recently. Also, at the end of Star Trek Voyager, the Borg is dealt a very devastating blow. Probably not defeated, but yeah. So the Borg are in no position to do anything either. So this in a way was a good stopping point, but I would have continued on and just, you could have the peaceful exploration, but you could also have a lot of political stuff going on. Like maybe do something like Deep Space Nine, except instead of the station being by Bajor, they take over another Cardassian space station, like right next to Cardassia, and the Federation's running it, and it can deal with overseeing Cardassia. There's a lot of potential for something like that. So I would have continued on, despite the fact that there wouldn't be a big new threat, but there could be all sorts of interesting political stuff going on. But then they went and did Enterprise, and then they went and did the reboot films. But yeah, overall, I'll just reiterate again that despite everything that I've said, I still enjoy the 2009 Star Trek film. Okay? and I will cover the second film, Star Trek Into Darkness, in another review, and I will do another review, not a review, but another video regarding the alternate reality thing that they've done. Okay? So it's 10:35 a.m. and that's it. Thanks for watching.